Hello, everybody. This is the DBC Community Show. My name is Michael, and I'll be your host. We'll be speaking with the various members of the Dragonboat community that make Canada such a rich hub for the sport we love. Today's guest is Matt Robert. He is one half of 22 Dragons, my home club in Montreal, and also my first coach when I decided to make the move into competitive paddling. He might be best known for his early contributions to the sport as a paddler and coach, but the perspective I'll be diving into is his insight into event organizing. 22 Dragons has been running events since 2003, ranging from as small as 6 to as big as 100 plus teams. So if you are involved in any kind of festival, you'll want to listen to this one. So without further delay, I bring you Matt Robert. And we are live. Matt Robert, thank you for joining me today.
Mike Wu, thanks for having me.
So let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved in paddling sports?
Okay, so the beginning started at the Cartierville Boating Club. So that's a canoe kayak club on the north shore of Montreal. It was literally, I don't know, maybe a 40-second walk from my house. Walk down the street, I was at the river, the boating club where pretty much I grew up. So that was my sport growing up. Other kids were playing soccer and hockey, and I had one option available to me. It was go down to the canoe club and spend all day there. So that got me into flat water canoeing.
Right, because your dad also did it, right?
That's right. So my dad, who grew up in the same house as I was growing up in, so he had the same type of summer. He'd walk down to the canoe club and spend his days paddling, and I guess had some success at it. And then all of his kids, all four of us, at one time or another, were in a boat at the Cartierville Boating Club.
And how will that lead to you meeting Matt Smith?
I was at lead meeting Matt Smith. So when I met Matt Smith, the Cartierville Boating Club was a bit more of a social club than an actual like competitive club.
Okay.
No, they have a tennis court there and a swimming pool and a lot of social members.
Okay.
And the competitive side had kind of really gone down. And anyways, I was still really into it. I loved it, and I was paddling in C1, and at one regatta, Matt Smith was paddling C1 as well, and he was a right, I was a left. I didn't have a partner at my club, and he didn't have a partner at his club, so I'm not sure who got us together, but they said, hey, how about you guys race in C2? And we did, and we had fun doing it. And he actually joined Cartierville that summer for us to go race at nationals.
Okay.
And then I flipped and I joined his canoe club the following year, and for the rest of my paddling time, which was the Point Claire Canoe Club, which was a very much up and coming club with, a full-time coach and a lot of kids that were really into it. So it was a perfect environment for me to go into from an isolated club to a really active one. Right. So Matt Smith became my C2 partner.
And then, so both of you guys are now paddling together, spending a lot of time together. And how will that stumble into the world of Dragonboat?
That's right. We were making our Dragonboat plans at the age of 15. No, we. What happened was in Montreal, as you probably know, Mike, it was the Montreal Chinese Restaurant Association that started the Dragonboat Festival. They started it like huge. It was kind of just like Toronto and Vancouver. When they launched it, it was just a massive success with a ton of teams. And Matt and I were paddling, we're training at the basin, and the Chinese businessmen came up to us and said, you think you guys can coach Dragonboat? So they had all these corporate teams signed up, but they didn't really have anyone to steer the boats or to coach. And they saw two young guys on the water paddling. They figured that we must be able to do it. And we figured we must be able to do it. And I never steered a dragon boat in my life, and he had never steered a dragon boat in his life. And literally, like a few days later, we're standing back of a dragon boat steering and thinking that it was pretty awesome. And at the same time, we're talking, this is like 96, 97. That's when in Toronto, it was exploding with their Island Festival, but the TCBA was sending teams over to race in Hong Kong, and their pool of athletes was pretty much the flat water world. Um, that was led by Jim Farintosh and Fred Heath, so they had access to flatwater guys,
Right.
and we were kind of catching wind of this, that hey, if you're kind of good enough, you might get picked to go on one of these teams to Hong Kong, and we were kind of just kind of at that level, you know.
Right.
We certainly weren't national team guys. Those guys were off in Europe racing. Then the next kind of tier of paddlers had a chance to go race with Team Canada. So all of that happened at the same time. I started coaching. We made these teams. So it was all like boom at once. Dragonboat got like thrown at me in a big way.
And so you get sucked into the world of Dragonboat like very quickly. All like very everything quickly intersects at the same time. And so I want to discuss one thing that I know that back when I got started in Dragonboat, actually on one of your teams, this was the team I'm about to talk about was known, but these days I don't think many people know about this. So I'm gonna put something up. I'm sharing a screen. Who is this?
Jesus. Where did you find that picture?
I'm very good at internet research. So
wow.
So yeah, describe to me who is this, and what is that flag that he's carrying? Where is he?
So I wish we saw the other side of the flag, because that's a Days In flag.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another, you know, there was the TCBA team going over to China, and then there was the Days In team, which was the local Montreal team, which again was all flatwater guys. That was led by Mark Granger. He's a national canoe kayak coach. He's been that for life. He's gone to many Olympics as a coach. And he was tasked with putting together a really fast Montreal team. First, it was to race at the Montreal Festival. We raced under the Days In banner with a great sponsor, Andy Ip from Days In. And then one year, Andy decided to take the show on the road and bring us to China, to what was then, I mean, is still the biggest Dragonboat race I've ever been to. It was unbelievable. And we were lucky we won. It was great.
How were those international experiences? How did that influence you in terms of like where you saw the sport going? What kind of lasting impression did it have on you?
Well, I'd say like the main thing back then for me was just like it was a ton of fun. I got like, you know, I was whatever 22, 23 years old, and it was just like so much fun. I love paddling, and then we're put in these dragon boats where we're doing really well, and it was fun to, you know, wherever we went we were a threat, and that was like, it was just exhilarating to be on those teams. I didn't really have at that time, like that picture you showed, that was 1999. Okay. And I hadn't yet really thought of this as is this going to be like a business for me? Is this going to be something I'm going to be involved with for a long time? I think that came more from going to, really seeing the growth here in Canada, going and seeing what's happening in Toronto, Ottawa. I went out to the Vancouver Festival, and you know, when I started coaching at the Basin, I just started my degree at McGill. Mm-hmm. And in my last year, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, these festivals are really, really cool. They're really interesting, and they're only in big cities. And it was at that time that, you know, I had to make a decision what I was going to do career-wise, whether I was going to be a teacher or, you know, I had this kind of idea. Matt and I had this idea that these events should be happening not just in Montreal, but why aren't they happening, you know, in Sherbrooke? Why aren't they in Quebec City? Why aren't they in, you know, smaller towns? And a lot of those towns, Mike, you discovered because of dragon boating. I don't think you would have ever been to Fermeneuve, Quebec, or to Amos, or to Saint-Georges-de-Beauce, or places like that, which are great venues for dragon boating. You get the whole town out.
For sure. Well, we'll get back to that. I have one last thing that since we're still in the stories of you as a coach, coaching. So I mentioned that I got my introduction into competitive dragon boat with one of your teams, the Wong's Dragon Boat Club, from way back when. And as far as I know of, but you can correct me because you'll know better. the Wongs were, if not the first, at least amongst the first like pure Dragonboat homebred competitive teams. Like ones that weren't mostly made out of flat water canoers. And for a long time, the Wong's Dragonboat Club was the fastest team and definitely had a target on its back during its heydays. What do you remember about that process of being involved in a team that just is getting started into being quote unquote truly competitive?
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to those crossroads I was talking about, like my last year of university. Mm-hmm. The leadership on the Wongs, like we're talking about starting to coach teams in the first year that would do 4 practices, do the Montreal race, and that was it. And it was a big deal. Like they did 4 practices, they raced, everyone was, jacked about it. And it was like, see you next year. And then the next year was like, okay, we added 2 practices, we did 6, like, aren't we something? Okay. And then the next year is like, hey, can we practice all year type of thing? And then by the 4th year, the Wong's leadership were like, okay, can we do this full time? Can we do stuff in the winter? Can we get like really train? And that's when I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable that we have this like captive paddling audience that wants to train. And what I was doing at McGill, I was doing a phys ed degree, and I was learning about exercise physiology and sports psychology and all. And I was like, I can use that knowledge and bring it to dragon boating and try an elite program, or I can go teaching them in high school. So it was pretty compelling to coach, and it was great. Like, you're on that team. You remember how motivated everyone was. Like, I mean, every practice, it wasn't a question of motivating people. It was almost like slowing them down. And you're right. Like the Wongs were one of the first Montreal-based teams to be like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do this, and we're going to try and do it right. And Verdun is another one of those clubs. There was the City Montreal team back then. There was this small group of maybe 3 or 4 clubs that formed at that time that really got things going, and the same thing was happening across the country. Like in Toronto, it was going from, okay, bringing flat water people on team. No, we don't need to necessarily do that. We just want people who are going to train with us as a core group. I do that in Toronto and Pickering, and it's really evolved. I can't believe it's been so long.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. Like having already done my first episode with Wendy, and Wendy hasn't even been in the sport for that long compared to guys like you. And as I was going through some of the stories, such as like, how did you go all the way back then? Like, God, it's been so long. But indeed, like when you think about it, like the sport has existed for a fair bit of time and has had its fair share of evolution through the country. Since we're on that subject, I might as well go next to this. So we're talking about the Wongs. You're also starting. We're now like in the early 2000s. You're starting to get involved you're thinking about making this into a business. So I'm going to share the other picture that I had found. What is this?
Oh, that's Rome. Yeah, I love that picture. That is, I mean, I wish I had a time machine and go back and watch that race. That was the men's 2K in Rome, 2002. One of the most epic 2K races I've ever seen. I mean, that picture is like, the whole race was like that. That is getting close to the finish line. So the guys that are like completely sunk there, I think that's the Russians, and the finish line is literally like 50 meters from there.
Okay.
And there were many more boats on their way, and it was like, okay, now the boats finishing had to like go around 2 or 3 boats that had already sunk, and all the paddlers in it, and the crashes on the corners were unbelievable. It was the Wild West of 2K. I mean, anyone who was there would remember that the race course was tiny. And this is, there are 1 or 2 fountains in the middle of this thing. Super shallow water. The turns were tight. the rules were kind of, I guess, to come. Maybe the IDBF learned a lot about this and made better rules. And I'm not faulting the IDBF. I would never want to change that race. It was epic.
Is this the first time that that a 2K was raced ever, or at least at a international kind of thing?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I doubt ever. At a club crew, I don't know if you ever have Matt Smith on, he might know, or someone from the IDBF would know. It was certainly amongst the first. Pardon?
Is this your first exposure to the Dragonboat 2K?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where else we would have raced it. Mm-hmm. We certainly didn't race it like as a qualifier or anything like that. The qualifiers then was just a 500.
Okay.
So that in Rome there, we were with the Wongs, and that was the start of the Montreal women's team,
right?
Which is still in existence now, and it's been a pretty good program. And I'm pretty sure the women won the 2K. And other countries might have been unhappy with how we turned, possibly. I don't know. I think everyone was unhappy with how everyone turned.
Right.
Nobody knew. Yeah, that was wild. That was good. That was a lot of fun.
Did this race inspire you guys to make 2Ks a thing at the local level?
Yeah, maybe subconsciously a little bit. I think what that event certainly gave us motivation in terms of like look at this thing. This is like dragon boating is exploding, mm-hmm. right? Like you go to this event and there's literally like I don't know how many thousands of athletes there were, but we were impressed just on the scale of it and the amount of countries that were dragon boating and how good they were. So that we went back thinking, okay, this thing is really, we got something here. It's going to grow. People love it. And then, I think there's just a general sentiment in Canada about 2Ks. Let's get them going. So as race organizers, it's easy. I mean, easy for us. People want to do 2Ks. Let's offer them. And they're still one of my favorite things to watch, be in, to officiate, to argue with people after. Right? Who doesn't like a little 2K controversy?
It's the best. Like we might complain about it during, but like there's a reason why they're always the most memorable races in almost every sense of the word.
Exactly. Whether it's a good memory or a bad memory, you're going to remember your 2K. That's for sure.
To stick on this theme of seeing of new race formats, seeing them internationally, and then bringing them to Canada. You were involved in, I think, the 2016 World Cup, and they also had some pretty interesting race formats, like the the relay 200s and the 100 meter race, and that was it the 1K with the small boats.
1K turning with the small boats, yeah. They got creative at that one.
Are there any of those formats that you saw at World Cup that you would like to try in Canada, or did it spark any thoughts about some different kind of race formats that you would one day like to try?
Well, I think for sure we're going to see a lot more small boats, and I think to make the small boat, I guess, appealing or fun, I do like the idea of like a 1K but with turns with the small boats. I'd love to see an even bigger boat, like those images we see of like 40-person boats or 60-person boats. I don't know how realistic that is, but there can be other formats. There can be, we've kind of entered the small boat world of stand-up and OC, and they do downwinders. So, why can't a dragon boat do a one-way 20-mile race aided by the wind? That can be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there can be some variety, but with that said, I think the clubs gear up for and get ready for, the main event, the 500 meters, the 200 meters.
For sure.
I still don't know many people who actually train for the 2K.
Yeah, that's true. That's
go on and do it. I mean, it's a difficult one to train for when so much is out of your control.
That is true. That is true.
You train forever for it, then you get T-boned, and there you go.
Although I do think that Quebec is unique, and I want to believe that it helps create better 2K steers because of the fact that, like, I think that only in Quebec can you get in one season 3 2Ks. If you go to nationals, 4 2Ks. I think in Vancouver they only do it once a year during the Vancouver Festival, and even then it's only for like the top 15 teams or something like that. Whereas in Montreal, if you go to the H2O Open, Montreal Challenge, Quebec Cup, you're doing it like everybody's doing a 2K, and you're getting it 3 times in one season. So that the number of times you get to practice like live racing with people all over the place is definitely increased.
Yeah, for sure. I think that helps. And don't forget the Quebec Cup, you do 7 turns, which
so
which is a little
again,
wild.
like more experience, right?
Even more experience, you can go 3-4 wide, and you'll learn a lot at those events, and people want it. They take a lot of time, the 2Ks, so the teams are sacrificing something to get a 2K. So instead of saying, hey, you're going to race 3 times 500, you're going to race 2 times 500 if you're going to get that 2K in there. So the response from the community, from everyone, is we wanted to do the 2Ks, and we know that there are teams from Canada and the US that come up to those events because I get real live practice here at my turn, and managing takeovers and stress and all that stuff.
So for first quick lesson, like it's worth squeezing into your schedule, like sacrificing a few things in your schedule to be able to fit into 2Ks because the people love them.
Yeah, but you also have to have the right size events, right? So if you're at a great, amazing community event that has 14 teams, maybe that doesn't fit in so well.
True. Okay, transitioning a little bit. I remember this one quick story that you had told me that I'd like to expand on. I think it's the Hudson River Festival, which was described as the race that turned you guys from boys to men as as event organizers. Is that right?
Yeah, or I don't know, almost made us quit.
So what about it taught you that this is not just for fun, like this is a real business and
real hard business?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, that was probably around 2005, around there.
So the business has existed for a few years now.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years, and those were years where basically anyone who called us and said, hey, Matt, I want to do an event, I'd be like, okay, let's do it. Almost sight unseen. So we've done races on a lot of interesting waterways. We're a little more selective now, which is which is probably good. But racing on the Hudson, I believe it was around 79th Avenue, around there, was really difficult. I mean, just getting the trailer in through New York City, getting that to the Parks Department, getting the boats off.
This is straight through Manhattan.
This is straight through Manhattan. I mean, this is and the local organizers kind of had things set, but not everything set. Okay. So you get there and there's some arguments over how much dock space you have, what you're, so it was a really, really tight space. And then the water, at least on race day, it was big rollers were coming in, and we're on the Hudson, a high traffic area, like really high traffic area, decent currents, and boats are flipping. And we're not just talking like, two capsizes during the day. Like, we're talking like boats are flipping almost every race.
Oh God.
And I'm seeing stuff like float down the Hudson that we're never going to see again. Like a full set of paddles float down the Hudson, like they're gone. Dragonhead floating down the Hudson, it's gone. I remember being at the edge of the dock and one steersperson panicking and not being able to bring their boat back in. And I just looked down and I saw a needle floating there and a few other things floating. I was like, all right, I got to jump in, swim to the boat and bring them in. Anyways, it was it was a rough experience. But I guess, like you said, that I guess it toughened us up, right? Like if we can pull that off in New York City, going to a big open area was much easier.
To consider all the difficulties.
And to give credit to that event though, there was prize money, and they attracted there was serious prize money now that I think of it, and they attracted like a team from Toronto, basically the national team ish, maybe national team light, traveled down because they wanted to get some money to put in their budget to go race elsewhere. The big New York teams were there, and 22 Dragons sent a team down. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
No, yeah, we beat the national team. It was very laney, it was very, very laney. But yeah, our team, we won some money, which was great because we lost a lot of equipment.
What would be the big lesson that you had extracted from that? How did the business change because of going through the Hudson?
You're just a little more selective, and I guess a little firmer on what is required upon our arrival and what we need to make the event happen. Materials that the local organizers have to provide us with, and that's obviously really tight right now. But if I go, I wouldn't change anything. It was, like you said, it was good. Two young guys saying, yeah, sure, we'll run the event for you on the Hudson, no problem. And then you go get the kicked down at you and learn.
It's the kind of experience, if it wasn't the Hudson River, it was going to be another event.
Oh yeah, and there were a lot of other ones, right? Like I mentioned it before. We used to do that event in Fermaneuve. I mean, that was that was a wild river. It was, there should be a rafting company there.
Since we're already a little bit on this subject, I'll say the question right now. What are the small details that festivals might not think about that really make a big difference in terms of what is a good and less good competition? You already mentioned dock space, which anybody at the 2019 Nationals in Regina would understand. I don't necessarily fault the organizers in Regina, because I assume that they weren't used to how much of a bottleneck it could be, because they might not be used to having an event with that many teams rolling that quickly. Any other kind of details that you've seen that really make a difference in terms of the quality of an event?
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, kind of separating the events of like a nationals type sport event and a community type event. So at a sport event, the number one thing is the teams, the athletes just have to feel like everything is completely fair. That's number one. That, I'm not in a disadvantaged boat. I'm not in a disadvantaged lane. The umpires and referees are very unbiased. We're looking for wash riding, not letting people get away with that, following the rules. We're talking about the 2K before, and our rules and our application of the rules has just evolved so much. And every time we evolve and call things better, teams really appreciate it, because that's all you want. You work really, really hard. You want to show up to a race where it's fair. You put the work in. You don't want some other element determining the outcome. You can do away with how good the sound system is. You can do away with, is there a band playing at lunchtime on the stage? The sports teams don't really care about that. They want a fair race and good boats with good officials. Meanwhile, on a community-based event, the sound system is really important. Okay. And keeping people really entertained during the day, like a top-notch announcer describing what's happening is really important at a community-based event. Fair, not, laney, whatever, community-based event. Just enough. Obviously, you want to make it feel like it's really fair, but you also want to give out a lot of awards, right? You want to make sure that the bank team gets an award, and the grocery store team is recognized, and that you just have a ton of fun. Like, the fun factor is really, really high at community events, and the fair factor is really, really high at the sport events.
That's very well said. Since we're transitioning now from we're talking about the community events, the fundraising events, and now Was It 22 Dragons was founded in 2003, so that makes 18 years that you've been doing these kind of events in, like you said, plenty of especially smaller communities. Have you seen any trends about what type of events work best, or by work best, I really mean like last, that have a lasting history, that have been able to run multiple years in a row? Is it the type of race lengths that you use, or the amount of practices, or is it the location, the involvement of the community? What are the important details if I were to start my own event and I wanted to make sure that it had a legacy?
Yeah, if we're talking fundraising events, which most community-based events are now, well, maybe not most, but most of the new ones, race length doesn't matter. When we started, we would go in and say, oh, you got to race 500 meters. It's kind of the international standard, this and that. And now it's whatever fits the good downtown location. If this creek runs through downtown and you can put 5,000 people at the park there, and it's really like stadium feel, then do it, right? Like, that's, again, the entertainment value, the fun value has to be really high. But for the events that are long lasting, the ones that have proven to us that they've lasted since the early 2000s and are going to continue, are the ones that champion a really good cause and put the cause at the forefront of the event. I can think of, just off the top of my head, our very successful American events that have been going on for a long time. There's one in Greenville, South Carolina. It's for their hospital system down there, and it's all about supporting the hospital. And it just so happens that Dragonboat is the means of doing this, and they put on a knockout event. All the team tents are dressed up, everyone's having a ball. The results on the water are kind of secondary to the results on the big check on the stage. So that brings people back, because I'm giving to a good cause, I'm having fun at the same time. It's a hard combo to neglect. It's just the cause is really strong, fun factor is really high. It's going to keep going.
And on the flip side, what are the details that hint to you that this event is a one and done? It's not going to be able to sustain itself.
Well, kind of just the opposite of what I said. Well, and I'll add a third one to it, but number one is kind of a cause where people question it a little bit, or the organizers actually don't promote the cause enough. People don't really realize, like, okay, my $50 is buying this piece of machinery, or my $50 is feeding these people, or whatever it is. Again, whoever puts that to the forefront really proves what they're doing with the money, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the events are just kind of bland. If you're running a bland event and you don't want to play pump up music in the morning, and you don't want to, maybe have an open bar, maybe at the end of the day or whatever, or halfway through the day. You're not doing a best dressed drummer contest. You're not dressing up the tents. You're just, if you're doing a what looks like a sport race to non-sport teams, bad combo.
Yeah,
And vice versa, right? If you get sports teams that go on an event and they're like, hey, the team next to me, they're doing jello shots. What am I doing here?
Yeah. I was just thinking this about how, like, generally people who are organizing events are people who are dedicated to the sport. People who are dedicated to sport are probably the competitive type, but then you end up running events the way that you like them as a sport athlete, and it's not at all speaking to the people that you're actually doing the event for. So
yeah, and that's like, that's a tough combo to hit, is exactly that. There are sports teams that say, hey, we'll put an event on, like almost like as our fundraiser. Which is great idea. You're showing your sport, but the problem there is, like I said, the cause is like, okay, I'm now donating money to someone so they can go play, basically, right? And then, just like you said, maybe they set it up where it's got to be 500 meters and you got to do this and you got to do that. And they kind of convey that to the local bank team that just wants to go and have fun. Yeah. It's very, there are successful club events where they're able to do it and do it really, really well. But that's the challenges they face.
Yeah, hitting that right mix of maybe making the sport team feel satisfied, but still running an event that is accessible to everybody.
That is, at the end of the day, it's a Dragonboat festival. So if you're inviting someone to a Dragonboat festival, you got to have a festival. If you're inviting someone to a Dragonboat race, then no problem.
Yeah, but it's two different clienteles that have two different.
Yeah, things. Absolutely.
Let's move on. 22 Dragons is something that people know a little bit less, is that it's involved through, actually no, not so much 22 Dragons. You are involved with also with Mission Dragonboat, a company that, amongst other things, sells dragon boats. So I think that you're in a unique spot to be able to notice where potential new hubs of Dragonboat might exist, especially now with the accessibility of small boats. Do you see, if you had to try to predict the future, where do you see the new hubs growing according to what you've seen in terms of sales?
Like what parts of the countries? It's all over the place. It's all over the place, and it's a really nice combo of, well, first of all, in terms of all over the place, we've sold champion boats from BC to Nova Scotia to Florida to Alabama to, it's really, it's all over the place. We can, 15 years ago, how many people knew what Dragonboat was? When you talk to someone, oh, I'm into Dragonboat. Now you talk to someone Dragonboat, there's a decent chance they know what you're talking about, because it really has spread. It's spread across the country now, and we're seeing a good combination of big clubs either updating their fleet or expanding their fleet. 10-man boats, or the clubs do want to have a variety of boats. The clubs that have BUKs are like, okay, well, we probably should have a couple of champions, and vice versa. Right. Because when they go to the big international races, it's usually one of those two. So they like to have both at their club. But what I'm getting at is, we're seeing that the clubs grow, and we're seeing new clubs start. Okay. In less populated areas, they're getting one boat and they're starting a club, and Obviously the pandemic year wasn't a great, we didn't hit any sales records on boats, that's for sure. But we're talking to people and people are inquiring about it, and they want to know when they can get a boat when this is all over, and just advice on boats, on maintenance on boats. I'm certainly not afraid at all that the pandemic has put a big dent in Dragonboat, and it hasn't. It's just kind of like
on
time
pause.
out for a while. Yeah.
What has been what has been the community's reaction to small boats? Have you seen small boats sort of decrease the sales of big boats, or are small boats entering communities that you would not have been able to get into usually, or is it just the established clubs that are just adding small boats?
Yeah, it's more the established clubs that are adding it. And it makes sense. If you're going to start a Dragonboat club, even if you're in a small community, you might think, okay, well, let's get a 10-person boat. But the price is almost the same, by the way. I mean, between a 10 and a 20. So we tell those small clubs, well, get a 20 and you can go 10 in it. And when you are 20, at least you have room for all 20.
Right.
And it still is the predominant race is by far the 20-man boat. So it really is like a second, third, and fourth choice for clubs. It might be bumping up in urgency for some clubs because of the race opportunity at Worlds, at Pan Am's. Obviously more events will be going 10-man. It's a great way for clubs to travel.
Right.
Just say, okay, let's have a little break-off team here. People that want to go to San Francisco or to wherever they have a 10-man race, easy to manage, get 12 people to go. Kind of I always think it's like a manager's dream come true, the 10-man road trip.
Yeah.
50% of the worrying to do.
Have you seen how much have you guys experimented with let's say like the smaller community events being run with small boats instead of big boats?
We just scratched the surface of that. Actually, you were at one of them. You ran our Amos race with small boats. They're traditional for a long time. They ran the big boats. I'm really not sure which way that's going to go. For a big fundraising event, we'd still recommend the 20. It's just more efficient. For big fundraising events, it's how many people are going to pay for their seat and support the cause. So we can fit more in a day in the 20-man boat than in the 10-man boat. There's a case to be made that they are more stable and probably safer for a community event. Maybe not, 20 people in the water versus 10. I guess that's debatable. But for sure, there's a place for it at community events that, like I said, we scratched the surface, and there's going to be a place. It's certainly going to grow.
I'm very interested to see how that's going to come along, because it does. I think there's a different vibe. There's definitely a different vibe between having really large teams, but let's say possibly fewer of them, versus a bunch of smaller teams. So like, fact is, even at the small community races, like, there's still a certain element of like wanting to race against every element of your community. So if small boats allows for more parts of your community to participate, there might be something there.
Yeah, I think so. And it's also proven, with the Pan Ams, I mean, they prove that people will travel for it. They will do it. I mean, that's the perfect travel example, is, going down south in, February, March, and doing one of those. But another one that's interesting to think of is like the ice race. Yeah. Those are small boats. And you saw what Ottawa did. I mean, what Ottawa did with the ice boat racing is like, just so impressive. It's unbelievable what they did. like hundreds of teams racing ice boat in a small boat and having a blast doing it.
Yeah, no, it's again, I think it's important for especially the competitive minded type of dragon boat athlete. If you take a step back and you think back to like what got you into the sport, more often than not, it's because it was really fun, and the ice dragon boat events are undoubtedly fun.
I can't believe that we're going to miss 2 years of it. You know, it's 2 in a row that we miss in Ottawa. But I know that they're in Ottawa. I know them very well there. They're keeping their things together. They're doing a good job of surviving. And, you know, unfortunately, their event being in June, I don't know whether it's going to happen or not. It's probably stacked against them. But I mean, watch out next February. It's going to be a party at Dow's Lake. That's a guarantee.
Yeah, like the moment we're able to make it happen again, like it's gonna be really fun. And I know that handful of 22 Dragon athletes that participate in it can't wait to do it again.
It's the perfect little road trip, fun. You don't take it too seriously, but as you know, as soon as you're on a start line, it doesn't matter.
Like suddenly you're back in it, and you're
the last setting
silent, and everybody's focused.
Yeah, you look over and you want to beat that team next to you, no matter who they are.
We're coming towards the end of my questions, and now we're as I'm going through my storyline, we're now into the present day. 2018, 22 Dragons has the good fortune of going to Szeged and winning a trophy for being the best performing club at Club Cruise. With that, I want to ask, to what if I were the owner of a company focused on running festivals, to what extent is it important to have a club associated to us? Did the 2018 Szeged event help you as an event organizer?
For sure it does. Well, first of all, it creates a big pool of athletes, because if you're gonna win that at Club Cruise, or if you win a Nationals Burgee as like the overall club, I mean, the number one thing it means is you have a lot of people. You're not going to. There are a lot of amazing clubs in Canada that are specific to one division. They go and they win their division, and that's, I mean, amazing. Well, our club, we were kind of across all divisions, and that's important, because we're now speaking to all divisions. The U24 sees that 22 Dragons has a program, and the Senior Bs have a program, and our premiers have a program. So that brings us credibility that, we have those numbers, which then, I think brings credibility to our races. Like, oh, that's run by 22 Dragons. They were, they're strong enough to support a big club. They're strong enough to do well at nationals and at worlds. Chances are their events are going to be decent. We at the very least, we know our members, we know what they want. So what they want, we try and deliver. And then that means most likely it's what PDBC wants at an event. It's most likely what, all the other clubs want at an event. So it helps. And then it does, it helps with our credibility, even running events in the US. I've heard the comment, many times down south, like, oh yeah, you're with 22 Dragons. That's an impressive club in Canada. And I can't take too much credit for it. Or, I'm more on the festival side. That's a big time Matt Smith project. And he's the backbone of the club, him and Lynn. And they've done just a great job.
And as speaking of the club and how it's grown, especially recently, a fairly new thing is, because we spoke about how the Montreal Festival started off first and foremost based out of the Chinese community with the Chinese Restaurant Association. And for those of us who who have been involved in Montreal Dragonboat for a while, there was a phase where the Chinese community became less and less involved, and especially as the sport became more competitive and focused in that field. And now the Chinese community is coming back in. And I wonder what kind of lessons have we picked up from that, and that could be important for other festival organizers to take into consideration.
It's like so important. You live that phase of where the Chinese community was there, and then they weren't there, and now they're back, and they bring a lot to the festival. They bring a lot to the festival, and now we're seeing that they're bringing a lot to the club too.
Yeah,
I mean, our club has grown from these Chinese community teams. First of all, just talking on the festival side, when they made a comeback in Montreal, it was like, you saw it. They came back and they were like super enthusiastic about it, and really, really, really competitive about it.
They took it really seriously.
The Chinese Friendship Cup. Sorry, what was that?
They took it really seriously, considering that they started barely a few months ago, kind of thing.
It was refreshing for us to see just this whole group come into dragon boating, and it's not like it's new to them, right? So it's not new to their eyes. It's new to our eyes that this group is coming in, and they're coming in with big flags, and they're coming in with cheerleaders, and they're coming in with they're ready to go, and they know this sport. And I think the biggest and best outcome for 22 Dragons Club is now those paddlers from the Chinese community had an outlet to keep paddling. Whereas in 1997, 98, 99, those teams would show up just like the Wongs did, do 2 practices, race, and gone. There's no opportunity. So now they race, and they're like, oh, there's a club. And it's as you see, Mike, it's a lot of the youth that are going. Their parents are saying, what? There's a Dragonboat club. Like, this is amazing. We know this sport, and there's somewhere to do it, and there's programs for my kids. It's perfect. So, having parental support in sport is massive. It's huge. And that never existed before in Canada, because it was mainly adults doing dragon boating. And again, there was no club support for it. I'm talking about the East Coast. I'm not talking about the West Coast, or kind of deeper into that than we are. But yeah, I'm thinking of myself as a parent who drives my kids around to different sports. There are parents now that drive their kids to the 22 Dragons Club, and Mike, you coach a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I think that these kids and families are going to stay in this sport for forever, really. I mean, it's their sport.
That is true. And what do you attribute this resurgence of the Chinese community? Like, if I were involved in my own little festival, what would you give me as advice, as a way of getting my Chinese community involved again, if they
well, we were really fortunate. We had we had leaders of the community. So we had leaders of the community, Susan Wong, being the main driver of this. And she was able to reach out to the community, get teams involved, but also bring back the cultural aspect. So there were many years that the Montreal Festival did not have, the song and dance component to it, and the food kiosk, the Asian food kiosk component to it. Like that had disappeared for maybe 6-7 years.
Yeah. And
Susan brought it back, and it brought a lot of teams with it. So any event that's starting up, like the first community obviously I'd go to is the Asian community.
Right.
Hey, let's get on board here. Most of the big events, traditional events, have those Asian roots to it.
so tapping into it really, like, it's a win-win for everybody, because it like you said, like, especially if you're properly tied with a club, then like you're the ecosystem just becomes that much thicker, and like all the interactions are so much better.
Yeah, totally.
So as we finish this off, looking into the future, okay, because we will have a Dragonboat this summer. I believe in it.
That's for sure.
Nationals has recently been announced that it's going to come to our home in Montreal at the Olympic Basin. What do you and Matt, you're involved with the whole organizing of this. What can you tell us about it?
So Mission Dragonboats is involved with it, since it's gonna be run out of the basin. We run events out of the basin. We know it really well, so we're gonna be helping out DBC. What can I tell you about it is I'm just really happy that DBC has taken the leap and announced this and is ready to host the Nationals this year. Obviously, they went as far into the calendar as they could.
And what is it, Thanksgiving weekend? That's right.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's necessary for them to do that, and we're excited about it. We're excited that we can help DBC pull off a really good show. We'll have fair racing, we'll have fair boats, we'll have those who've been to the basin know that the layout is just, that's what it's made for. So I'm just super happy that DBC has made that announcement. Maybe it doesn't happen, but they're trying, and they're trying really hard.
That is true. And I can only imagine you guys are not going to pull any stops into making sure that should this event happen, and we all hope it does, it will be one of the best nationals that we've ever seen at this point.
I'm certainly rested up, Mike. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to be in an event and be, really active in the event. Everyone is, right? So hopefully my rest is coming to an end soon.
Yes, indeed. Matt, I think that's been we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much for having given us a bit of a story, a whole history of how you've seen the sport, and a little bit of a glimpse into what you see the future holds for us in our community of Dragonboat. So I thank you so much for the time, and I hope you have a great day.
All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on, and the future is bright for dragonboating.
Thanks. See ya.